It was supposed to be a quiet, peaceful night. The rain was tapping softly against the window, and the clock ticked slowly toward midnight. But within just 1 hour, the silence turned into something else: whispers, shadows, and footsteps that didn't belong to anyone in the house. It was one of those nights when the world felt quiet yet strangely alive. The rain poured steadily, tapping against the glass like 1,000 tiny fingers. The air smelled of damp earth, and thunder rolled across the distance. The protagonists sat curled up on the couch, scrolling through their phone, enjoying the solitude. The house felt safe, familiar until the lights began to flicker. At first, it was just a brief dimming, then another, longer one, followed by complete darkness. The power was out. The only sounds left were the soft ticking of the clock and the rhythmic drumming of rain on the roof. They lit a candle and watched its flame dance, casting tall, distorted shadows on the walls. The sudden stillness in the house was unsettling, as if something unseen had entered with the darkness. The wind howled faintly outside, brushing tree branches against the window. It should have been a peaceful night, yet a heavy feeling settled in the room, that eerie awareness that they weren't entirely alone. Each crack of thunder seemed to draw something closer, something waiting patiently in the silence, hidden just beyond the edge of the light. The sound came softly at first, a faint, dragging noise from beneath the floor. The protagonist froze, listening carefully, convincing themselves it was just the wind or maybe water dripping through the old pipes. But the noise came again, heavier this time, like slow footsteps moving across the basement floor. They tried to ignore it, turning up the volume on their phone to drown out the sound, but it didn't help. The dog, resting nearby, suddenly lifted its head and began to growl low and deep, staring toward the basement door. The growl turned into sharp barking, echoing through the dark, empty house. Every creak in the walls now felt alive, every gust of wind carried a whisper. Gathering a bit of courage, they tiptoed toward the basement door, the candlelight flickering in their trembling hand. The door was closed but slightly ajar, swinging back and forth with each draft. A cold breeze seeped out, carrying a smell of wet earth and rust. The sound stopped just as they reached the door, leaving behind a silence that was somehow worse. Then, without warning, a single loud creak echoed from below, as if someone, or something, had just taken one step closer. The sound came softly at first, a faint, dragging noise from beneath the floor. The protagonist froze, listening carefully, convincing themselves it was just the wind or maybe water dripping through the old pipes. But the noise came again, heavier this time, like slow footsteps moving across the basement floor. They tried to ignore it, turning up the volume on their phone to drown out the sound, but it didn't help. The dog, resting nearby, suddenly lifted its head and began to growl low and deep, staring toward the basement door. The growl turned into sharp barking, echoing through the dark, empty house. Every creak in the walls now felt alive, every gust of wind carried a whisper. Gathering a bit of courage, they tiptoed toward the basement door, the candlelight flickering in their trembling hand. The door was closed but slightly ajar, swinging back and forth with each draft. A cold breeze seeped out, carrying a smell of wet earth and rust. The sound stopped just as they reached the door, leaving behind a silence that was somehow worse. Then, without warning, a single loud creak echoed from below, as if someone, or something, had just taken one step closer. The silence stretched on until it was broken by the sharp ring of the landline phone. The sudden sound made the protagonist jump, their heart pounding. Who would call this late, especially during a storm? They hesitated before picking it up, glancing at the caller ID, and froze. The screen displayed their own house number. Confused and uneasy, they answered with a shaky hello. For a moment, there was nothing but static, a faint crackling noise mixed with the hiss of the rain outside. Then a distorted voice whispered slowly, almost like a growl, "You shouldn't be alone." The words were muffled, yet clear enough to chill the air around them. The protagonist's hand trembled as they dropped the receiver, the dial tone echoing through the silence. A loud bang suddenly came from the back door, like someone had slammed it hard against the frame. The dog barked furiously again, racing toward the noise. The protagonist grabbed their phone, trying to call their parents, but the signal was gone. Only the faint hum of static filled the line. The candle flickered violently as the house seemed to breathe, each shadow stretching, each gust of wind whispering their name from the air in the room grew heavier, the kind of stillness that presses against your chest and makes every sound sharper. The protagonist crouched behind the couch, clutching their phone with the flashlight on, its small beam cutting through the darkness. They could hear its footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and uneven, as if someone were dragging one foot slightly behind the other. Each step echoed softly down the hallway, in perfect rhythm with the rolling thunder outside. The sound stopped suddenly, replaced by a long, drawn-out creak of a floorboard. The protagonist held their breath, eyes locked on the flickering candle across the room. Then, for a split second, the flame bent sharply as if something had passed in front of it, a shadow, human-shaped, tall, and silent. Fear crawled up their spine as they tried to convince themselves it was only their imagination, a trick of the light. But the dog whimpered, backing away, its gaze fixed on the hallway. The footsteps started again, slower this time, coming closer. The phone's battery warning beeped, breaking the silence. They wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The realization hit hard: whoever was walking wasn't outside anymore. They were already inside. A flash of lightning illuminated the hallway, bright enough to reveal the mirror at the end, the one that always fogged up when it rained. The protagonist's eyes widened as they noticed faint writing forming across the glass, as though drawn by invisible fingers. The words appeared slowly, one by one, until the message was clear: "I'm upstairs." The room seemed to shrink, the silence pressing in on every side. Their throat went dry, and their pulse raced. They knew that the only mirror upstairs was the one in their bedroom. The thought made their knees weak. Every instinct screamed to run, but their legs refused to move. Gathering every ounce of courage, they decided to head toward the kitchen door, hoping to escape into the rain. But as they approached, the flickering candlelight revealed a trail of muddy footprints on the floor leading from the basement door toward the living room, and then stopping just a few feet away from where they stood. The footprints were fresh, wet, and uneven. The candle's flame flickered again, as if disturbed by someone breathing nearby. Slowly, they turned toward the sound, only to find the basement door slightly open, and the darkness beyond it alive. The police arrived minutes later, lights flashing through the rain as the protagonist stood trembling on the porch. They rushed inside, checking every corner of the house, their radios crackling with static. But no one was found. Every door and window was locked from the inside, except for one, the basement. It hung open, creaking softly as the storm wind blew through. The officers went down to search, their flashlights slicing through the damp darkness. They found nothing alive, only a pile of soaked clothes near the drain and muddy footprints that seemed to vanish halfway across the floor. One officer said it looked like someone had been standing there for a long time. The protagonist tried to explain what happened: the noises, the phone call, the message on the mirror, but their voice shook with disbelief. When the storm finally calmed, one officer reviewed the home's security footage. The video showed the protagonist sitting alone in the living room, terrified, just as they had described. But in the final frame, As lightning struck outside, a tall, pale figure appeared behind them motionless, staring directly into the camera before vanishing completely when the power went out.